And welcome back to another episode of Double Doink Podcast. My name is Brendan Deek. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Really cool episode coming for you. I am joined by the author of the best draft guide you can find, titled The Beast. It is 308 pages long this year. Dane Brugler of The Athletic is with me. Dane, what's going on?
Hey, it's awesome to share it with everyone. You work on something for so long, and you finally be able to share it with fellow draft diehards, people that really dive into this stuff, and are so interested by what you're interested in. That's a pretty cool feeling this week, just to share it, and the feedback's been awesome. So really appreciate everybody checking it out.
It is my favorite piece of sports content that comes out every year. I look forward to it. Once it comes out, throw it in my group chat of my draft buddies, and we kind of have a little celebration. So thank you for all the hard work, man. It's really appreciated by everyone. How many years have you done it?
Well, I mean, honestly, the first time I ever did it was my freshman year at Mount Union in my dorm room. It wasn't nearly as extensive as this or as detailed or anything like that. But that was the first time I was like, you know what, this would be pretty cool if and this was back in 2005 draft. This is the Aaron Rodgers, Alex Smith draft. So that was back in the day when draft magazines, that was still a big thing. And I was like, you know what, I'm looking at these draft magazines and I could do a better job than this. So let's just, scouting is what my passion is. So let's just see if, do my own. And it was initially, it was my resume to get into the league. I sent it to teams and said, listen, I wanted to be able to do this for you. And I mean, it got me a bunch of interviews and a couple offers, things like that. I never ended up making that transition over to the NFL, but it's something that it's always been a passion of mine, really. It's just that fascination of football evaluation, scouting, the differences between college and the NFL, the always evolving game, and just trying to keep up with all of that. It's a really fascinating thing to go through every year and then reset and do it all over again.
What stood out this year compared to other years?
I think this year we have a lot more older players. A lot of guys that are already 23, 24. That was interesting. That's, a result of COVID, with the extra year of eligibility, and a lot of guys taking advantage of it. So I think a lot of teams that place a lot of emphasis on age when it comes to draft prospects, they're going to have to compromise a little bit with, maybe a guy that usually they wouldn't go after. Maybe they'd be more comfortable taking a 23-year-old in the third round because that's the talent pool. That's what the college game is giving us in this draft. So I think you always look at certain positions that stand out more than others as just being deeper. This year, running back, certainly one of those. The third round this year of running backs is going to be a lot of fun. I think we're going to see a run on those guys. A lot of these guys that I think teams are going to say, second round maybe a little too rich. We don't need to take them in the second round, but we don't think they're going to be there in the fourth. So I think that third round, we're going to see a run on these running backs. Tight end, another deep group. Quarterback, that debate has always been fun. So I think you go position by position, and you've got different storylines each year, and no different this year with each position.
Something that I kind of took away from the draft guide is there's a lot of smaller players maybe in this year, especially at the wide receiver position. Some at running back. Are you seeing kind of a change of the guard in the NFL where maybe the smaller player profile is becoming more and more common, I guess, in the NFL, and it's kind of an adjustment that the league has to make?
I think that the league is being a little more, they're more accepting to different body types. My top 7 wide receivers this year, 4 of them, over half, are under 180 pounds. I don't think that's going to be the norm necessarily, but it just happens to be that's where we are this year. A lot of lighter players, and that's a little bit of a concern. It's ideally you want guys that are bigger than that, and this is a receiver draft that we've been spoiled the last few years, right? Mm-hmm. With 2 years ago, Jahmyr Chase and Jalen Waddle and those guys. And then last year with Garrett Wilson, Olave, and Drake London and Dotson. And I mean, Jameson Williams is going to blow up this year. So, and Traylon Burke's still a good player. So it's, but if any of these receivers were in last year's draft, I don't think, I mean, where would the top guy this year rank in last year's class? For me, Jackson Smith-Njigba, he's my number one. He would be probably my 7th receiver last year, 6th or 7th. I mean, right, he'd be in that range. And so it's not as top heavy of a group this year at receiver. And I think we'll see that reflected on draft day. Probably maybe two receivers end up going first round, maybe 3. Teams are always desperate for playmakers. So, it wouldn't surprise me at all if, late in that first round, we see another one sneak in there. But for the most part, I think a lot of teams are comfortable saying, hey, we'll wait till the second round. We'll wait till day 2 and get our receiver. So, it's a really interesting group of smaller guys, like you said. So I don't know that it's necessarily the norm, but I do think that NFL teams have no choice but to be more accepting to just all these different body types and how they can help. And, you have certain thresholds at certain positions, and those have gone out the window in recent years where, some teams when I was, coming up through scouting and, being mentored by a lot of people, I know one team, they had a strict, if he's under 200 pounds at safety, not going to draft you. Nowadays, you got to throw it out the window. You got to be more open-minded to these just different, and we've seen a lot of players, a lot of prospects these days where their skill sets really blend different positions. So he's a little bit of an outside corner, a little bit of a nickel, or a little bit of a post safety, a little bit of a nickel, a little bit of a linebacker, maybe a little bit of a strong. I mean, more so than ever, I think we've seen guys where their skill sets are a little more hybrid, a little more blended of multiple positions. And that's always interesting when, I think we never more have defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators been more just open-minded to these different things and saying, okay, look, these are our best players. Let's put them in a position to succeed. So, I run a strict scheme, but you know what, this guy does this really well. So let's change it a little bit. And so I think we're seeing more and more of that. And the more that offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators are going to be open-minded, the more we're going to see some of these undersized players, or maybe, quote unquote misfit players that 20 years ago would have been viewed a lot differently. Now they're getting a lot more run because teams are identifying their strengths and how they can impact the roster.
The Isaiah Simmons and CJ Gardner-Johnson draft is what you're saying.
I think you go position by position and, point out a guy that's really broken the mold of, go to a guy, like DK Metcalf, like, how does he fall to the 60th pick in the draft? Bad 3-cone, stiff athlete. But okay, if you focus on the fact that he's a 4.3 guy and he's just a monster human being, hey, we can work with that. Why, and so like a guy like Jalen Hyatt this year from Tennessee, as an underneath guy, as a short area agility, short area routes, like that's not his specialty. It's not where he wins. But you're telling me blazing speed and really good ball tracking skills, hey, I can work with that. There's value for that at the next level. So I think really identifying what these guys do really well and focusing on that's the key here.
Okay, so speaking of smaller players, the best player on your draft board is Bryce Young.
Yeah.
And I love to see it because I think he's the best football player in this draft. Explain your reasoning as to why Bryce Young is quarterback 1 and the best player in this draft to you.
He's special when it comes to several non-negotiable things that you look for at the quarterback position. Obviously, from the neck up, that's everything at the quarterback position. You have to be able to process. You have to be able to understand everything that's going on out there. And it's more than just being smart. You have to be instinctive. You have to have that vision. And I really believe that his basketball, because he grew up training for basketball as a point guard. I really think that is translated to his quarterbacking skills with the way he sees everything going on, the spatial awareness, the way he can create space for himself. and then just the accuracy. Now, obviously, the size is an issue. There's no way around it. You can't explain it away. You have to be okay with it. And not everyone will be okay with it. And I certainly understand that. If you're telling me that you don't want to draft a complete outlier at number 1, I get it. I understand why. But with most quarterbacks, you're sacrificing something. Maybe he's not the best athlete. Maybe he doesn't have the biggest arm. Maybe his accuracy is not there yet. You hope it gets there, but not there yet. You're sacrificing on something. Unless you just have the perfect prospect, you have to sacrifice something when it comes to a quarterback. And with Bryce Young, the only thing I'm really sacrificing is size. And yeah, that's not ideal. I wish he were 6'3.5", 225 pounds and still had everything else. But if I have to sacrifice on something, you know what? I'll take my chances because I know the way that he processes everything going on around him. I know his accuracy. His ability to create is unbelievable. So, I'll take my chances and it's not so much the size, like you can't see over blockers. It's not that. It's more, can he stay healthy? It's more the durability because this is a guy that welcomes the chaos. And so he's okay, a guy bearing down on him. And, he's going to find that extra, or he's going to give it that route an extra beat to get open. That's what he lives for. But, in the NFL where everybody's so much a little bit faster, a little bit stronger, everyone hits a little bit harder. That's not easy to do. So he needs to protect himself. But still, I'm going to take my chances with Bryce Young and the special ability intangible wise and what he brings between the ears, the accuracy. I'm going to bet on that over everything else.
One of the things that I noticed when I was watching Bryce Young was his 2021 tape is just like off the charts. And I feel like if he had some similar supporting cast around him in 2022, this wouldn't even be a conversation. Do you kind of agree with that?
Well, I think his 2022 tape was far more impressive than what he did when he won the Heisman Trophy the year before. And it's because exactly what you said. He didn't have nearly as supporting cast. I mean, watch that Texas tape. And his receivers can't get open. They're not doing anything to help him. The offensive line was okay this year for Alabama. I mean, no Evan Neal. There's a lot of changeover this year on that Alabama offensive line, and there's a reason for it. So Jahmyr Gibbs stud. I mean, I'm not going to make excuses for him Young not having a running back because he absolutely did. I think that Gibbs is one of the best running backs in this draft. But the receiver talent was very subpar. No Jameson Williams, no Mechie, nobody like that even close to that level. So what he did this year, still leading, it felt like every drive Alabama had was almost like, all right, guys, come on. Just Bryce Young dragging the team up and down the field, making something happen. So what he did this year was far more impressive to me than what he did even as a Heisman winner the year before.
That Texas game, that was when he had to scramble for like the 29-yard run to set up the field goal. Is that correct? I think
yes,
that's the game, right?
Right, yeah.
That's a perfect example of like what he can do, right? Like just.
I could pull so many different plays from that game where he's just. There's one specific play, and I tweeted it. If you search my Twitter handle and Bryce Young, you can find the clip. But he's extending the play. Throws this, it steps up one step, avoids the rusher, throws a perfect BB to the receiver whose hands are out in front, and he just drops it. And it's just like, oh my, like get this guy some help. It's amazing that he created this platform for him to make that throw, pinpoint accuracy, and the receiver just drops it. So it's just, you're not getting any help from the guys he had out there. And so, we talk so much about, and this is a conversation with CJ Stroud is, having Marvin Harrison to throw to and that offense and the offensive tackles on that Ohio State team and how that it does worry me a little bit when, he goes to the NFL and he doesn't have as much time to throw and, all these things. Bryce Young had a lot of time to throw because he created it for him, for himself. And so his time to throw is a little bit higher, but it's of his own doing. And so, it's usually when you have an Alabama quarterback, you can say, oh, well, the talent around him, that really made it easier for him. Not this past year for Bryce
Young. There's a lot of smoke recently about the Houston Texans not taking a quarterback at number 2. I think that would be absolutely insane. Like if Bryce Young is there, I think you run to the podium.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think Bryce Young goes one. I
Okay.
just at the end of the day, I when the trade initially happened with the Panthers, I thought, you know what, C.J. Stroud, I like that fit a lot. That makes a lot of sense. But the closer we get to the draft, it's just like, you know what? I mean, Bryce Young's the best quarterback in this draft. And all the things I just said about Bryce Young, that's exactly why he should go one. That's exactly why if I'm the Panthers, that's the direction I go. And so, yeah, if he does go one, Houston at two, it's interesting because we just don't know the behind closed doors there, like who's really making the decision. Is it Nick Caserio? I mean, there's rumors that he might not be there for
Yeah.
long. How much does ownership, how do they have their thumb on the scale with this whole decision? D'Amico Ryans is a first year head coach, but obviously he has a lot of say in what's going to happen. So I don't know. Ryan's he might see this as this is my first year. Like let's keep adding to the roster, and we next year looks like a pretty good quarterback class. We've got multiple first rounders next year. Let's keep building up this roster. Let's add Will Anderson to the group, and let's keep going. So I don't think it's crazy. I think it's certainly a possibility. But it would be tough to pass on a CJ Stroud if he's staring you in the face there at number two.
It's very interesting. Right now, just on FanDuel, Bryce Young is minus 350 to go first overall. Like the odds have kind of swung heavily in that direction. Okay, so you brought up a name, Jahmyr Gibbs. I wanted to talk about him. I know you've probably been smothered with Bijan Robinson conversations, so we'll pass on him today. Hit me with your Jahmyr Gibbs take because I'm an Eagles guy. I'm struggling to figure out if he's worth the 30th overall pick in this draft because the Eagles pick at 10 and 30. So kind of sell me on the reasoning that he should be a first round pick.
His suddenness in his feet it's really something special. He's not a guy that, because he's 200 pounds and he's always going to be 200 pounds. He's not a guy that you're going to, pack on weight. He'll be 210 a year from now. That's not really, you don't really want to do that to his body. You want who he is right now. And that's an extremely explosive player with the ball in his hands. And he led Alabama in receiving last year. So this is a guy that is a big-time playmaker out of the backfield, catching the football. And his ability to make guys miss is really something special. And it's not just that he's quicker than everybody else. His understanding of football geometry is outstanding. At the line of scrimmage, he's an offensive lineman's best friend because he understands how to press, sort, hit the hole, perfect timing, get through. And, at the second level, you're just, if you're a safety, the last thing you want to see is Jahmyr Gibbs with an open lane and a lot of different options, the ways he can make you miss and make you look silly in space. So, I mean, he's a guy that's so nimble with his footwork, the way he moves, the quickness, and then just the instinctive feel that he has because we don't talk enough about, we talk about quarterback decision making. We don't talk enough about running back decision making, and he is so far above average, more so than your average running back in terms of reading his blocks, understanding and anticipating where those holes are going to open, and then hitting it with timing and maximizing everything. So, not the biggest guy. You're going to sacrifice a little bit on size there, but I mean, he's a top 25 player. In my opinion, you cannot name the top 25 players in this draft and not name Jahmyr Gibbs. That's my opinion. I think he's that good of a player. Now, obviously, you get into different theories about is a running back worth a pick in the top 30 and all that. I don't know. I would have no problem taking Bijan Robinson top 15. I'd have no problem taking Jahmyr Gibbs top 30. So, these guys are playmakers. They impact the scoreboard, and, they bring something a little special that most teams don't currently have in their running back depth chart.
What happened in Alabama? Why did he only get like a third of the run share last year?
I mean, well, I think you look at it, and that's how they operate the offense. Even though he only had a third of the carries, like I said, he led the team in receptions. So, he's still, the amount of times he's touching the football is quite a bit. And they had a two-back system that they would use. And so, I think not just grinding him into the ground was a big something that they really cared about. But I mean, he had 150 carries, almost 1,000 yards, averaged over 6 yards a carry. So this is a guy, get him the ball in whatever way you can, and he's going to make something happen. And he doesn't drop the football. I mean, good luck finding drops on his tape, because it just you might be able to find one. That's it. He doesn't have a lot of drops. He's a really natural receiver.
Okay, so speaking of the Philadelphia Eagles, what do you think the best possible outcome for them is in this draft?
Best possible outcome. I think I don't think they're going to draft Bijan Robinson at 10. I don't see them doing it. But if they could trade back 5 spots and pick up say a 3rd round pick, whatever, another day 2 pick, I think all of a sudden the idea of Bijan Robinson becomes a lot more appealing to them. And so I think if you are able to trade back from 10, draft Bijan Robinson, get an extra day 2 pick, and then still have pick 30, where you could go your top edge rusher. You could go Brian Branch if he's there. There's a lot of different options that you could go at pick 30. But trading back from 10, picking up extra value, and still getting Bijan Robinson, to me, that's just you're upgrading what you had at running back last year with a rookie on a fairly manageable 5-year deal. Like, that's, I don't know. To me, that is as good as you could hope for if you're an Eagles fan.
You just made a lot of Eagles fans happy. It's the hot topic of conversation, especially in Philadelphia.
Well, you don't think they take him 10, right?
I don't. I think it's just not Howie Roseman's MO. I think personally that they're not going to be picking at 10 probably in the next 4 or 5 years, as long as Jalen Hurts and they have A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. So I think personally that Howie Roseman wants to get a blue chip player. Bijan Robinson describes that. But I think in Howie Roseman's mind, he's probably thinking if Jalen Carter, Will Anderson fall to 7, I think he wants to go up and get one of those guys personally. But I definitely think trading back for Bijan Robinson is something that Howie's going to look to do. But I think trading at a 30 is maybe a little more likely than trading at a 10, if that makes sense.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, this is a player that I've really been struggling to try to grab the hype of. You have him as your 10th ranked player, Lukas Van Ness, edge rusher out of Iowa. Mm-hmm. I am really struggling to see a top 30 player here. Sell me on Lukas Van Ness.
I think you're getting an ascending player. Like, this guy's getting better and better and better. The way I described it was you're watching Growing Pains and you're seeing this, who's this Leo DiCaprio? This guy's pretty good. Like, I'm gonna buy some stock in this guy, and then Titanic hits, and you're like, okay, yeah, okay, I was right. I think Lukas Van Ness. That's what you're looking at with him. I think he's a top 10 player in this draft. There's so much explosive power that he doesn't even understand how to use yet. That he had, 6'5", 272. Didn't even start this year. But he played starter level snaps, so I think it's a little overblown, that the fact that he just didn't happen to be on the field for the first play of the game, but he still played starter level snaps. His ability to win inside outside with his hands, with his power, and he's still figuring things out. And so I think the more coaching he gets, the more experience he gets with being able to sequence his moves and understand, okay, if I set it up this way, I can work to this. This blocker's, he's drifting on and doing this, so I'm going to do this. When he understands all that, puts it all together, because he's young, he's still 21 years old. I think that you're really going to get a guy that's getting into he's just figuring out how good he could be. Put it that way. And like I said, he can give you inside outside versatility. He's a grizzly bear out there. So there will be a little bit of a grace period where there's development that's needed. You can see how young he is with certain areas of his game. So I don't, it's kind of like Travon Walker last year, where he was the number 1 overall pick, but you can't really expect him to go out there from day one and lead the league in sacks. That's just not good. That's not realistic. With Van Ness, it's the same type of thing. You can't really expect him to go out there and he's immediately going to lead the team in sacks. But I think he's going to show flashes. And then year 2, year 3, he's going to be there. Being mentioned as one of the best up and comers of in the league at the position. So I think if the Eagles at 10, I think that's a realistic possibility for them. And one of those guys that Howie's probably got on the short list of defensive linemen that we know Howie loves his defensive linemen, and I think Van Ness is definitely on that short list.
Okay, Dane, last question for you. One of my favorite parts of the Beast is like finding those late round gems that I didn't know about until I got the draft guide. So I'm going to ask you this. I'm going to put the third round in this question. So third round and day 3 combined. Give me a couple, maybe 3 or 4 players that you have your eye on that you kind of think are going to be great value in the round 3 or in day 3.
Marte Mapu, Sacramento State. I list him as a safety. Some teams have him as a linebacker. He non-combine guy. He had a great week at NFLPA. Then he goes to the Senior Bowl. Had a great week at the Senior Bowl. He tore his pec, so no workout numbers for him, no testing, and so I think that's helped him kind of stay under the radar a little bit. He made my final top 100. I think this is a guy that has a good chance of going on day 2. And even though he's not talked about a ton, Marte Mapu, a guy that can drop, can cover, can play the run, gives you that hybrid, that nickel ability that a lot of teams are looking for, that can cover a tight end, that can cover a slot, that can play the run, that can do all these different things. Marte Mapu is one of those guys, so keep him on the radar. Chandler Zavala from from NC State, another guy who non-combine guy, under the radar a little bit. But this guy can play. I think he's a plug-and-play starter in the NFL at guard. Played next to Icky last year at NC State offensive line. This year, he was even better. So a couple of non-combine guys that aren't talked about a ton, but I think could sneak into the top 100. They're both in my top 100. Guys that I think are pretty good going to be pretty good pros.
Some of my favorite tape to watch is like guys that are in a league that they're too good for, like the FCS, and just like mauling guys. Like Cody Mock, in my opinion, was like the funnest tape I've watched. Like just absolutely mauling guys. And North Dakota State, it was funny.
Yeah, he's one of the most fun guys to talk to watch, to everything. He's a top 50 guy, easy. I think. I mean, he's what you want to play. He might be the best center from this draft by the time it's all said and done. He could play center. I used to be a really good guard in this league. Also, I had one of the best 3 cones I've ever seen for an offensive lineman. So that's something that obviously shows off his athleticism. He's a former high school tight end. Maybe moving back for a few snaps and let him work. So,
Dan, you're the man. Appreciate you. Why don't you plug in your social media where the readers can find the Beast, all that good stuff?
Just you have to be a subscriber to The Athletic. And I mean, even if you want to subscribe for a month, sign up for a month. Enjoy all our good draft content. It's obviously not that expensive. And you get the draft guide for free. And I think the draft guide more than pays for itself. If you like the draft at all, I promise you will not be disappointed with the level of detail in this guide. There's no other draft guide out there that has all the testing information for almost 1,900 players. I promise you that. So you can find the link on my Twitter at DP Brugler. So hopefully people check it out, and love to hear what you think about it.
Thanks for joining, man. Appreciate you, and enjoy the draft.
Thanks, Brendan.